a real close family. But lately, some of my kinfolk have disowned a few others than me. I guess it's because I kind of changed my direction. Lord, I guess I went and broke their family tradition.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Chapter 1, Family Characteristics. Now I start out with a little bit of Hank Williams there for you, just to get us thinking about what are some of the family traditions that influence us in our lives and will influence the families that we will be interacting with on a daily basis. For this little opening vignette discussion, I wanted to talk a little bit about my family, talk about family values, and give you a little bit of a summary of the chapter, some important points. A couple definitions here to start with. You can obviously read these, but talking about family starting at two or more people who carry out the functions of a family. And so this can be same-sex partners, this can be grandparents, it can be any two people, even just two people without any other children, even a parent and a child as a single parent. So you want to think about that. So family starts with just two people. Size and form refer to the number of children, parents, live-in family members. Some people talk about family in many different ways. My definition of family growing up was very different than other people's definition, and that proved very interesting in discussions as I got older. A couple statistics that I just wanted to throw out there that I thought were interesting. 69% of children in the single parent home are of low income. Single mother homes that include a child with a disability are more likely to experience poverty. Some of these things, some of the statistics thrown out there were very, very interesting. Kind of felt that we knew these things, but when you see the statistics, it's sometimes overwhelming. Cultural considerations. When you think about the family as a whole, we need to think about the cultural background of the family. This goes without question, but just to really bring this to the surface here. Culture, that foundational values, beliefs, set standards for how people perceive, interpret, and behave within their environments. So culture plays a huge influence on who we are and how we interact with other people. For a long time, there used to be this term called a culture of poverty. In fact, it's still floated around today. And that's really kind of a bunch of garbage, because people don't choose or want to live in poverty. So it kind of discounts the societal structures that are in place that keep people in certain structures of society. A whole nother story, but just to give you a little bit of an example of what culture is and how it can be used in actually a damaging way. Microcultures, the multiple influences that create a person's overall cultural identity. There are lots of different factors that influence our identity and how we grow up and develop. This is actually Bronfenbrenner's biological model of identity development, and you can see in the microsystem that the family, the religious setting, classroom peers, these things play a really big influence on us as we are growing and developing at a young age. And as we grow up and get a little bit older, there's been some preliminary research that has shown that this system expands and we go towards the exosystem and then into the macrosystem that have major influences on us, things like political systems, economic, society. Of course, we don't really even pay attention to those until we get a little bit older, right? Next thing I want to do is just discuss a little bit about my family and who I am. This is actually a picture of my great-great-grandmother working on the farm. This is from Cincinnati, and as you can see, she's not necessarily sitting in the kitchen somewhere. She's not typing at a desk. The picture and image that I have of her and of my family is, hardworking family. You can see the rows go back for as far as you can see there, a little bit on the horizon. So that's kind of how I grew up and where I get a lot of cultural influence. So to go through a couple ideas that were expressed in the book but just related to myself, and I encourage you to do the same thing. So for me, when I was growing up, and I'll compare and contrast myself with my wife's family as well. For me, it was just my father and I growing up. We are what I would term a WASC, White Anglo-Saxon Catholic German family. Of course, religion playing a little bit of a role there. We're definitely working class, single parent, low income family, working for everything that we had. Exceptionality, well, I did not grow up with an exceptionality. I guess I was considered gifted in school, and sometimes I almost feel that being gifted is kind of a burden in today's classrooms. Health, I had very good health, no problems. I was almost, too healthy in some instances. Life management skills, a lot of coping mechanisms for me growing up were how to deal with poverty, how to deal with relationship with just my father, and the very good relationship that I had with my grandparents, extended family. So for me, extended family definitely included my aunts and uncles, cousins, because I didn't have any other close siblings or other family members to work with. And of course, again, talking about that single parent. My wife's family is a little bit different, and as I go through this, you'll see the definite relation to how families with individuals with special needs react and change and grow. My wife was one of 5 children. Her family, although very German, definitely related to the Irish side of her family much more. Both of us grew up on the west side of Cincinnati, which, if you know anything about Cincinnati, very German working class town, especially on the west side of town. The east side of town has a little bit of a cultural difference, and however much you want to play that up, you can, but there is a little bit of a difference in where money comes from and how people get money. My wife actually grew up with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. The onset was at the age of 3, and she could only do what was really allowable. So growing up, she had issues with taking gym class, for example. She wasn't even allowed to play sports or run. And so that really had a major influence on her, how she interacted with children in her neighborhood, how she interacted with her family. Her sisters gave her the wonderful moniker of Boo Boo as a child, because if she would fall, she would normally cry because, well, it hurt. Those types of things. Some coping mechanisms, life management skills in relation to my wife had to do with spiritual religious. Her mom and her grandmother are very religious, and this is how they coped with the onset of JRA. And this, now not pertaining particularly to my wife, but the idea that she had a disease growing up definitely added to the stress in the household, and my wife's mother and father divorced at one point, but then got back together later on, so love won out in the end. But you could see and definitely understand in talking with them that the amount of stress that they had growing up was very big because of the lower middle class working family conditions, where they grew up, all of the things put together. There are many, many variables that talk about the stress that the family would have, even when they got divorced and all that kind of thing. There were lots of things happening. So, and again, 5 children. Not too often you see that today. I'll stop rambling and continue on. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of an example of how the different variables of a family impact a family. There are other ideas like family values that shape our personal culture. And I won't go into this very much in depth. You have an activity that pertains to this, but the idea that families value sometimes individualism more than collectivism, where individual outcomes and autonomy, having power over ourselves is valued a little bit more than those group outcomes. So I don't really care how the group gets their grade, but I really care about my grade. That kind of thing. And families would do that as well. So they might not do something that might benefit the entire school, but they would definitely do something that might benefit their own child. The other thing we want to be conscious of is the system-centered approach versus the relationship-centered approach, where solutions that are guided by policies, whether they come from the state or the school or local government, whatever it is, especially when we talk about students with special needs, this becomes really important. If we are making decisions just based upon standard policy, whatever that might mean, many families might be very much against that approach. And I think it's really important that we think about that and try to understand how our families view policy. Because they might benefit more from a relationship-centered approach where we could tailor something more to the individual needs of the family. I just wanted to mention very briefly the special ideas, especially in transition from family values to our parents with limited English proficiency. You know, this goes without saying, but to make sure that you honor that cultural diversity and try to develop and continue to develop your cultural competence with regards to this. Remember, though our ENL students are becoming more and more not just our Latino, Mexican American friends, but also people from all over the world, including African countries, and other Eastern and Western European countries, so Asian countries. So you'll definitely want to find out a little bit more about the culture before you start deciding on policy and making decisions. Oh, by the way, I did want to mention the interpreter versus the translator. An interpreter is a language person, someone who speaks the language and does a discussion with you in that foreign language, but the translator will do written documents. So if you need documents written in a certain foreign language, then you would want to find a translator, not an interpreter. Interpreters are helpful, though, of course, for our family meetings. In summary, just a couple things. Hopefully, you get from this overview that the first step in developing that effective partnership is to understand the characteristics of the family. Find out who the individual members are, the unique circumstances that they may have, single parent household versus multiple children in the house, those types of things. The cultural background. Remember to definitely increase your cultural competence. The socioeconomic status plays a large part, especially when we talk about stress in the household and some of the coping mechanisms that individuals have to rely upon. And the geographic location, where do the individuals come from? The book talks about rural versus urban areas. We might even be able to just split Cincinnati down the middle and look at the geographic location and what that might mean to somebody in those cases. And finally, developing partnerships with families will be the main goal of our time together. And so some of the things that I gleaned from this chapter and thought about were this idea where you want to ask questions. You want to find out as much as you can about the family. You want to talk with them. You want to demonstrate care. You want to show that you care about them and the well-being and outcomes of their child. You want to think about language. We talked a little bit about the individuals with limited English proficiency. I want to think about peace, that what you are doing is a step towards peacemaking in general, that individuals may not have had, or certain families may not have had positive interactions with school. They might have, and definitely not potentially individuals at school who are telling them that their child might have special needs, and that you're going to help this. So think about peace in that way. And finally, in relation to that as well, you are bridging the gap between school and home. So definitely try to establish a sense of community with your families. Overall, thank you much for listening, and we'll move on to chapter 2 next. Thank you.